I'm Claire Richardson. Welcome. The United Nations has issued a stark warning about the plight of Palestinian civilians trapped by the war in Gaza as Israeli military forces conduct operations into the southern city of Rafah. The UN says aid operations could grind to a halt in just days. Vital border crossings remain shut. Hospitals are having to close, and airdrops along the Gaza Strip have only brought limited relief. Another attempt is underway to bring supplies across the Mediterranean. A U.S. container ship carrying aid left Cyprus on Thursday in the hopes of getting much-needed relief to Gazans. I'd like to bring in Sam Rose with the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA. He's joining us today from Rafah. Sam, the UN warning aid is grinding to a halt. Can you give us a sense of what the consequences of that will be in these next crucial days?
Absolutely. No, we're running on empty, essentially. The border's closed to supplies, the border's closed to fuel, and this will have really serious impacts on the population of Rafah and the population of the rest of Gaza. We've got over 1 million people still in Rafah and 2 million people south of Wadi Gaza. Half of those people are children, and they're already, suffering and enduring catastrophic conditions in relation to food security, access to healthcare, water, sanitation, and shelter. So if those supplies grind to a halt, indeed they do, and people are on the move and suffering the impacts of another bombardment, another operation, we dread to think what the conditions will be here.
Now tell us a little bit about these evacuations from Rafah. Could you paint a picture for us of how difficult it is for people, over 1 million people who've already been displaced, and then tens of thousands of them to get up and move again to another part of the Gaza Strip?
Yeah, the situation is incredibly difficult for these people. We were estimating as the UN last night that around 110,000 people had evacuated. Outside my office, I've watched more and more people leaving today, packing up their things, their belongings, what little that they have, into donkey carts, bicycles, pickup trucks, and just fleeing for safety. So the people who are evacuating are those inside the evacuation zone and those beyond it, because the bombardments and the airstrikes have gone far beyond that declared evacuation zone, and people are on the move. It's orderly where I am, but in other parts of Gaza, of Rafah, it's quite chaotic. It always is with this many people on the move. It's a very desperate situation right now.
And what kind of considerations are these people making as they take this difficult decision? On the one hand, Israel urging them to leave. On the other hand, facing these difficulties in doing so. What's going through their heads?
They face an impossible dilemma. Many people, many of our staff, UNRWA staff, many working from Gaza, they've been displaced 5-10 times already. So they're faced with this impossible dilemma. They've been through it before, whether in Khan Yunis, Gaza City, or elsewhere. So either they wait or they go now. Either they wait and hope that nothing happens, or they go now. And if they wait, the conditions could be worse when they go, because the opportunities to move when they want to, with what they want to bring, will be ever more difficult. But it's also conditioned by where they are going. They're being pushed out into sand dunes, very difficult to provide services there, very squalid, overcrowded conditions, or else they're being ushered back or into Khan Yunis, which is a city that's sustained savage bombardment, has essentially been razed to the ground. So either sand dunes or the ruins of bombed out buildings. And in both those places, very difficult for any aid agencies to reach them. And of course, made more difficult, nigh impossible, by the fact that no materials and no fuel are coming in right now.
Sam Rose with UNRWA, thank you very much for speaking with us on DW News.
Thank you.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel will stand alone if the U.S. halts arms shipments because of Israel's Rafah offensive. President Joe Biden says he will pause offensive military assistance if Israel goes through with a major operation in Rafah. More than 1 million civilians are sheltering in the southern Gazan city. Netanyahu says Israel must defeat Hamas, which is designated as a terror organization by the EU and the US, including in Rafah.
We are determined and we are united to defeat our enemies and those who seek our souls. If we have to stand alone, we will stand alone. I have said it before, if we have to, we will fight tooth and nail.
DW correspondent Tania Krämer is following developments for us in Jerusalem. Tania, how intense are attacks on Rafah getting?
Well, in the past 24 hours, there have been reports of air bombardments and intense shelling across the Gaza Strip, in Gaza City, in some of the neighborhoods, but also in central Gaza. But again, also very intensive in the eastern areas, but also in other areas in Rafah, also with reports that troops and the tanks have been amassing in the past days across the border fence there in the south. Now, of course, the situation is very fluid, and tens of thousands of people are actually on the move. They have been told or ordered by the Israeli military in those eastern parts of Rafah to go or to evacuate to other areas towards the western side of the Gaza Strip. Now, the United Nations agencies there, they're estimating that over 80,000 people have been heeded that call, but others put the number much higher, and people are still leaving. Also, those we've been talking to some of them on the phone, saying, even those in the areas that have not been asked to leave the area, because they're fearing that this could expand also into other areas of Rafah. And now these are, of course, people, we heard it in the report, that have been displaced time and time again, and they have the choice to either go further back up north to Khan Yunis, where a lot of the city is in ruins and in rubble, or to go to an area in Al-Mawasi that is on the western shore side. That's a sandy area, and 8 organizations have said there's not enough infrastructure. It's a very difficult area for people being there. They have to be in a tent. It's another also very hot day today here in the region. Now, and of course, the south is the area where most of the 8 organizations have been working, and it becomes increasingly difficult for them. So it is a situation that gets more dire by the day.
But Tania, doesn't a full Israeli offensive in Rafah put truce talks on the line?
Well, from what we understand now, both delegations, the Israeli and the Hamas delegation, but also the American mediator, they have all left Cairo now. And the Egyptian Foreign Ministry has put out a statement basically calling on the two sides that they have to show more flexibility to come to a deal or an agreement that would see a temporary ceasefire and the release of those remaining, or at least some of the remaining hostages in Gaza. Now, there seem to be major disagreements still, from what we understand, on the main points. What Hamas wants, a permanent end to the war and a permanent withdrawal of Israeli forces. There's also, not clear how many of the hostages that Hamas would be able to release are still alive. But we are also hearing time and time again that the Israeli government has said they want to go into Rafah, whether there's a deal or not. And that is of great concern, especially here in Israel, to the hostage families of those 128 hostages that are still being held in Gaza.
We'll leave it there for the time being. Tania Krämer in Jerusalem, thanks very much.